A journey through aesthetic realms, music and poetry is the gentle voice of the soul, filled with love and devotion in all circumstances of upheavals and suffering. Poetry and music, as well as love and spirituality, are the melodies from a heart of compassion, resonating earnest benevolence within the universe, between upliftment and submergence, between immensity and confinement, between ignorance and enlightenment. Poetry and music are forever the genuine voice of an open heart, bringing humanity beyond a realm of ambiguity to elevate longing souls and cultivate the noble spiritual values of human beings. We now invite you to immerse in the stream of sounds in a journey through aesthetic realms through the poems and music by Supreme Master Ching Hai and esteemed artists.
Désir d'amour ne dure qu'un moment, chagrin d'amour endure toute la vie. Joys of love are just a moment long. The pain of love endures the whole life long.
In this earthly life, love can bring both happiness and sorrow. Happiness is fleeting, while sorrow is endless. When love comes, the world seems to shine with faith and vibrancy. One's heart is like a flower blossoming. Laughter reverberates. But when love departs, the heart withers, being left with despair.
Désir d'amour ne dure qu'un moment, chagrin d'amour endure toute la vie. Joys of love are just a moment long. The pain of love endures the whole life long.
Mr. Fred Karlin was a spectacular musician, bestowed with God-given talents in an assortment of genres, spanning jazz, rock, the blues, and classical. His eclectic compositions lift eager listeners into a realm of timeless contentment. In light of his passing 6 years ago on March 26th, today's A Journey Through Ecstatic Realms, Music and Poetry is the second segment of a special two-part tribute to the brilliant Oscar and Emmy-winning American composer Fred Karlin. Frederick James Karlin was born on June 16, 1936 in Chicago, Illinois, the United States of America. In his teens, he began playing the trumpet and studying jazz compositions with the famed jazz composer and arranger Bill Russo. He entered Amherst College, where he studied with Professor Alvin Adler and wrote his String Quartet No. 2 as his honor thesis. After graduating with praise in 1956, he moved to New York City, where he worked as a composer and arranger for the Radio City Music Hall Orchestra. He also took part in jazz and pop recordings, as well as collaborated with a number of artists. These included bandleaders Harry James, Chubby Jackson, and perhaps most notably the King of Swing, Benny Goodman. In 1967, he made his movie composition debut with Up the Down Staircase. Then, for the 1968 film Yours, Mine, and Ours, starring Hollywood greats Lucille Ball and Henry Fonda. Next, Fred Karlin's score of the 1969 film The Sterile Cuckoo earned him a Grammy nomination for Best Soundtrack Recording. It also featured the music from Fred Karlin's Oscar-nominated song Come Saturday Morning, sung by the versatile actress and singer Liza Minnelli herself. This song was later recorded by the folk rock band The Sandpipers and became one of their most loved songs. It reached number 17 on the US Billboard charts. The following year, in 1970, Fred Karlin's rising star continued to soar as he won an Oscar for Best Original Song for his composition For All We Know. The beautiful number was featured in the motion picture Lovers and Other Strangers, starring Academy Award-winning Diane Keaton. For All We Know was also recorded by the vastly famous Carpenters. It became outstandingly popular in 1971 and received a gold record. Among other movies Fred Karlin scored include Michael Crichton's Westworld, Loving Couples starring Shirley MacLaine and Susan Sarandon, Future World starring Yul Brynner, The Stalking Moon starring Gregory Peck, and many others. Another song entitled People Come, People Go, for which Fred Karlin composed the music, with lyrics by his beloved wife under the name Tilwyth Kimry, was featured in the film The Baby Maker. The film score, also written by Mr. Fred Karlin, was nominated for an Oscar in 1970. For his work in television, Fred Karlin received 12 Emmy nominations and won an Emmy for Best Original Score for the 1974 television landmark movie The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, starring famous actress Cicely Tyson. On top of creating new melodies that would be adored by generations to come, Fred Karlin was also dedicated to the preservation of music throughout the years, and together with his wife founded the non-profit Historical Institute of American Music. Meanwhile, Fred Karlin offered his cherished services in the Board of Governors of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences from 1972 through 1975, as well as the Board of the Composers and Lyricists Guild. He was also a trustee of the Film Music Society. In 1997, he received the President's Award from the American Society of Composers, Authors and Publishers, or ASCAP, for his work with the prestigious ASCAP Fred Karlin Film Scoring Workshop. As an author of Fred Karlin's books Listening to Movies, The Film Lover's Guide to Film Music, published in 1994, and On the Track, A Guide to Contemporary Film Scoring, published in 1990, are used by film composers and universities worldwide. His book 100 Great Film Scores was published posthumously in 2005. Among his endeavors, Mr. Karlin also set Supreme Master Ching Hai's poetry to music, creating an extraordinary symphonic portrait entitled The Peace Seeker, It was premiered at the One World of Peace Through Music benefit concert organized by the Supreme Master Ching Hai International Association at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, California, USA in December 1998. Prior to the concert, he was interviewed by Coast Radio 103.5 FM and KEZY Radio 95.9 FM. Mr. Karlin expressed his thoughts about the concert and his special composition in the following interview on November 15, 1998.
I've called the piece of music The Peace Seeker, and that is a phrase from one of her poems that's really a short little fable telling the story of a woman who metaphorically represents maybe all of us, who is in search of peace and happiness, and who finally discovers that after looking everywhere for it, it's right there inside her. And just as she becomes content and blissful with the thought that she's found peace and happiness, she looks around her and finds that nobody else really is finding this, that there's still so many people suffering from not really finding themselves in their center and what it is that's really important to them. And so she begins to cry, and the tears become the stars to help light the way and remind everybody for eternity of the compassion that this wise person feels. And so my musical piece, based on her poems, tells really about the sense, the deep sense and intense sense of compassion, which her lyrics are all talk about, and about the search for inner peace. And my assumption always has been that one by one, if we find that inner contentment and peace, and find what's true to ourselves and what's important in life, really, that if we all found that, bingo, one world peace.
I see. And the title of the concert is One World of Peace Through Music. So would you say that these poems and the music that you've adapted to them convey that message of some way that we can all seek peace in this world?
I think it's subtle, and maybe that's good. It's not preachy. Out of the 40 minutes of music, there are 5 folk rock songs based on poems of hers that have become lyrics through this process that I've used to adapt her poetry. And basically, they're concerned with how painful it can be. It's so painful to sometimes feel this compassion for others and wonder what one can do about it. So given that sensibility, which the poems express, I've made a setting which I hope eventually will create the sensibility by the end, that the answer, it may be an unanswered question, what can we do? On the other hand, it may be answered individually by people. We provide the answers. So we find our answers to how we can soothe this intense feeling of compassion, but you start with the sense of compassion for each other and the interest in everybody's well-being.
And has it been a positive experience for you? Have you enjoyed your interaction with these poems and laying the music to them? It
really has been terrific. And the group has been extremely supportive to my creative vision as I've seen this thing evolve. And that is, if not rare, it's at least uncommon. And it's a tremendous pleasure for somebody who's working toward a vision and to allow that vision to evolve, because it changes. The vision can be clear and still you find it still continues to grow and evolve during the whole course of your work frequently. And so it's been a tremendous pleasure in working with the materials. I saw many of her poems and was able to select those that I felt I could adapt and put together into a continuity. They each really are kind of a character, and that particular character is speaking her, it's always a woman, her point of view, because they really are very personal expressions of Suma Ching Hai during the period of time, or periods of time that she wrote these poems. And that's why I have a woman, female singer, Mel Kubik, coming down from Portland to sing it, because I've imagined them all being a woman's statement, although they're very universal. And so each one is a different character. And some of them speak, for example, the first one called Winter Song speaks of a moment in this character's life when walking through a desolate town in the cold of winter with snow falling, she happens upon a statue. Now there's nothing more inanimate and cool or cold or dispassionate than a statue, so it's a very strong image. And she senses or feels that this stone statue is in fact feeling compassion for those who suffered in this world. Well, if a stone statue can feel that way, this is very strong and certainly makes us, and feel that we might. And also, it's a very moving experience to the character, whose lyrics become the character of this song. So, obviously, there's no answer within that statement. There's only the statement that, in fact, this exists, and that the stone statue and this woman, the character, feel this compassion. So that's her character.
I went to a foreign street on a cold winter afternoon. The snow threw itself like a shroud on the dry treetops. The houses on the roadside lay silent like graves. Pale street lamps stood in a stupor, exhausted. Park, the wind in my breaking heart. A cold stone statue proudly stood in the winter sea, as if feeling sorry for those who sought fame and fortune, as if feeling sorry for those who suffer. As if feeling sorry for those who sought fame and fortune, as if feeling sorry for those who suffer in this fleeting dream, this fleeting dream.
She sketches very specific characters in very specific moments. And those are nice poems and nice lyrics to work with, because they give you something tangible that still has a more universal or more of an expanded view of life. So it is universal, and you make your decision and you decide when, in fact, you've been reached enough so that you do something. And we don't all, nor should we necessarily, respond yes, yes, yes all the time. How could we? We'd be spread too thin. In every resource, time, emotion, you get spent emotionally. You can't suffer with this night and day emotionally. Nobody would be strong enough to keep going. So you have to take some kind of a philosophical viewpoint even about suffering of the worst kind to get through the day and the year.
What can I do for the world? What can I do for my people? What can I do for the world? Always for hurts me so much daily with every misfortune, everyone in a world full of misery. This expensive thing I possess that I can never sell nor throw away. This little heart of mine, so little and so fine, beats enormously in the world full of misery. Take my heart away, won't be hurt anymore with the world today. What can I do with my heart? What can I do with her? It hurts me every day. It hurts me every night. What can I do for the world? What can I do for my people? Throw away my heart, this little heart of mine. Let him take my heart away. What can I do with my heart? I wanna throw away my heart.
Another one, and I'll mention this specifically because of the high contrast, it's set right in the middle of the piece, and it's called He Couldn't Buy. And basically, it is the story, and the character is telling her own story again, of a woman who has had two choices clearly at one moment in her life, her love and her passion. And I think this can be taken on a non-specific. It could have been a man, but maybe it could have been that she wanted to be a professional cellist. It could be any passion, sure. And you could read it however you want, which good poetry always lets you do. So it is the love in her heart, and she has either to choose that or to choose security. And security also, although she does specifically mention it in terms of dollars at one point, so it's money, security also has its deeper meanings and ramifications that really sometimes, as it may have been in her own life, can be life and death. If you're in a really dangerous situation and you have to decide between getting out of there and choosing the secure way or staying, we all, in most cases, probably in most cases, should go for security if we can, because you can't ever express the rest of these feelings if you don't start by being secure. Sure. So there are exceptions, naturally, and people sometimes die for those exceptions. In this case, it wasn't like that, but it was a serious enough and significant enough moment in this character's life where that decision became crucial, and the character chose the security, and the character then sings about that. And really what the poem says is that although you have given me security, you couldn't buy my heart, which is still over across the sea. And that also can be taken to be literal. She left home and she left whatever her heart represents, a man or some other love in life, or not. It can be taken specifically or metaphorically. Over the sea may not exist at all. It can just be next door. Sure. So it's very powerful, and I've said it as the most rock-oriented song, so that it's not sentimental at all. It sounds much more like a piece that Madonna might sing.
He stays on the other side of the sea. He stays on the other side of the sea. I have to go with Johnny for the safety, but I couldn't tell. No, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell my heart to come with me. She stays on the other side. She stays on the other side of the sea. Yeah. She stays on the other side of the sea. Stays on the other side. Oh, my heart, what can you do for me? Oh, my heart, you give me powerful feeling. But Johnny gives me everything. Oh, my son, what can you do for me? Oh, my son, you give me beautiful colors. Johnny gives me big dollars. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Johnny. Big dollars, thank you, Johnny. You have brought me free. Oh, why couldn't you buy my heart for me? To leave with Johnny for security, but he couldn't take. No, I couldn't take. I couldn't take my son along with me. He stays on the other side. Oh, he stays on the other side of the sea. Of the sea, yeah. Stays on the other side of the sea. Stays on the other side. Oh, hey, stays on the other side. Johnny's brought me here with lots of money, but he couldn't. Oh, he couldn't buy. He couldn't buy my heart along with me. She stays on the other side. She stays on the other side of the sea. Oh, she stays on the other side of the sea. Where have you gone to, my winter sun? Won't you miss me? Won't you miss me? Staying on this side of the sea. Where have you gone to, my trader moon? Won't someone tell me if you will ever return?
What would you say is the message that you're trying to convey throughout the piece?
The message is to find your inner self and find your happiness and your peace through that. But it's, as I say, it's subtle. It's not preachy, and you draw your own conclusions to it, just as is so true with poetry and with her poems specifically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As I say, if there's a message to my piece, it's subtle, and especially insofar as the poetry is expressing the difficulty with dealing with the intense emotions of compassion and love of fellow mankind that we can have without knowing what to do about this. Mm-hmm. And so obviously any positive message that comes out of that, you bring a lot to it, because you've got to supply the answers. You're the listener. And so I don't want to overemphasize that. I think that it's an entertainment as well, and that my approach, even with the orchestra and the choir and all that, and it being having some elements of being a symphonic work, is really a folk rock work. That's how I think of it.
There were times tomorrow wouldn't arrive. I waited all night feeling very, very tired. My soul was immersed in an endless nightmare, struggling so hard to be free from the sea of misery. There were times the sun would not rise. I prayed in vain for the future to arrive. Like in a coma, I lay in the long darkness, praying for tomorrow to quickly come by. There were places where spring wouldn't visit. I waited hopelessly for cherry blossoms to bloom. White snow everywhere instead of sacred bells pealing to herald the new year. Only the cold winds whistling. Like a bird in the sun of a stormy sky. day and night, time flowed differently. My heart still felt there was something incomplete. Perhaps it was a love I never discovered before. Like a bird in the middle of a stormy sky, like a heart getting ready to die, like a child reaching out with an unheard cry. Immense oceans couldn't contain my melancholy.
A couple weeks after the One World of Peace Through Music benefit concert, composer Fred Karlin also conveyed his warmest regards and shared his profoundly spiritual artistic vision in a touching letter to Supreme Master Ching Hai.
January the 3rd, 1999. Dear Supreme Master Ching Hai, Megan and I were very disappointed that we were unable to meet you and visit during your stay in Los Angeles. My chief concern immediately after the performance of The Peace Seeker was to be certain that Reverend Jerome Smith was taken care of and returned quickly and safely to his hotel room at the Century Plaza. Once I knew that Jerome would be escorted with care, and I allowed myself finally to feel the cumulative effect of preparing for our concert. Consequently, I was simply too exhausted to remain in the hall for the second half of the program and the reception thereafter. Thank you very much for phoning us with your concern for my health after the concert. It was very thoughtful of you, and I appreciated your concern. I was and am just fine, which my annual visit with my Los Angeles doctor confirmed. It was a great pleasure to adapt your poetry to a dramatic musical setting. I hope my slight changes, modifications and additions were acceptable and seemed appropriate to you within the context of The Peace Seeker. From the outset, I sought to create a unified presentation that would allow your poems to become songs that would coexist within a continuous piece of music. Once I read the poem Jerome Smith recited at the opening of the piece, Once Upon a Time, I realised I could weave the 5 songs together into a singular statement entitled The Peace Seeker, using each song to reflect a different aspect of our struggle to come to terms with the suffering we see around us and sense within our own lives. This opening poem seems to serve as an allegorical fable for us all. The very first impression I had upon studying it was the sound and melodic line of the boys' choir singing 1 drop, 2 drops. The choices we make in life are not always easy and may be laced with sacrifice. He couldn't buy. Awareness is painful, as is compassion. Cannot do a thing with my heart. But compassion also can ease the pain and emphasize the similarities and connections between us. Even as we feel compassion for others, we may cry out for their compassion when faced with the nearly unbearable anguish of separation from one we love, as you suggest in Farewell Song. Since the songs comprise about half of the music in The Peace Seeker, I wanted to create music that would allow these folk rock statements to be at one with the orchestra and the orchestral music that surrounds and connects them. I composed so that my folk rock rhythm section, used to back our solo singer Mel, would continue as a significant element now and then throughout the instrumental portions for the piece, which greatly helped the continuity. I used my solo flugelhorn trumpet passages for that same purpose. My horn also served as a gender balance, with the solo female voice and the contrasting youth and innocence of the boys' choir. From the beginning, I realised that I could interweave actors performing short readings of portions of your poetry to further strengthen the continuity and heighten the meaning of the work as a whole. And, ultimately, your prayer, may each one find his peace, became our final message. Not the formula for an easy solution, but rather the suggestion by implication that if we all seek and find our peace within us, in so doing, we will all contribute to the world's growth and evolution. It is not easy for a creator to explain such artistic and philosophical goals while a piece of dramatic music is still in his imagination, nor does it necessarily seem safe or wise for a listener to trust somewhat abstract descriptions of such a vision. I am pleased with the results, and if I have satisfied you as well, and at the same time given them all a reason to be proud of their own courage, then I am especially pleased and gratified. Megan and I extend our warm wishes to you for a joyous and happy new year, and give thanks for such a rewarding experience. Most sincerely yours, Fred Karlin.
After the One World of Peace Through Music benefit concert in 1998, Mr. Karlin traveled to France to do some film work. Subsequently, he returned to Hollywood, USA, to work on his film projects and graciously met with our association members at his Beverly Hills home. Following is an excerpt from our interview with Mr. Fred Karlin on September 19 in 2000.
When I got the second notebook of poems, the poem that leaped out at me was a longer work called Silent Tears, because we're talking about her poetry, and it's so wonderful, and also it had such a bearing on the concert and on my piece. Just to read a few lines from one of the poems within Silent Tears. This is the first thing you hear in my piece. You hear an actor come on stage and he says, "Once upon a time, a true peace lover wandered around the many worlds in search of eternal happiness. She walked over the face of the earth, the suns, the moons, and the clouds. At last she found that it was all the while hidden in her very heart." And I thought right away, oh, well, this is wonderful, because there's a major theme here. You know, what we're all looking for is right there inside us. And then I realized many of her poems talked in very strong metaphorical language about a person trying to reach their inner self.
So basically, when you received all the poetry, you went through it and you chose the ones that you felt that you wanted to work with, that brought across the message.
Yes, I had to figure out what a message would be that would be consistent with her philosophy and mine. It was about 8 months. The most difficult time was the first 2 months working out the script, the libretto as it were, and writing it and orchestrating it. It was wonderful. I loved it. It got me very deeply into my music. And since I do so many different things, it was particularly exciting for me to be able to stretch out and spend that kind of time on something that was so art-oriented and so message-oriented.
Right. What are your thoughts on Supreme Master Ching Hai, now that you have performed this piece and knowing her music and poetry?
Well, I find her an extraordinary person. The kind of time and love that she gives for all of her humanitarian efforts and her artistic efforts is really remarkable and unusual. Not that many people have that combination of instincts and impulses that she does. And the poems continued to get deeper as I worked with them. They not only remained deep, but they continued to get more multidimensional. I just found myself feeling privileged to be able to work with her through these poems. I didn't get to collaborate with her, but I felt like it was a true collaboration.
Are you satisfied with the Peace Seeker and how it came out?
Yes, very much so. Of course, you always want to do the next piece, and what it did for me was to make me realize that this kind of work must be a part of my life from now on, because it's a way that I can give, just as when I teach and write my books. I feel like I'm really contributing to the lives of other people. And of course music can do that too. Look how we all respond to Beethoven's Ninth so many decades later.
What's it like at the moment when the audience has applauded and you finished the piece? What's that like?
Well, it is very exciting, but you know, after a 40-minute performance, there are so many other emotions that flood through you. I had a lot of pride for all the people who performed with me. I just thought they all did so well. And that's a heavy emotion. I mean, I felt a lot from that. And then, you know, Supreme Master was there, and that was, as I say, an honor. And I could see her from where we were, and it seemed like she was enjoying this. She was bouncing up and down during the heavy rock piece. And that pleased me a lot, because after all, she wrote the poems and was a collaborator, even though we weren't working together. And so you want that person to be happy too, and it seemed like she was. So all these things were going on at the same time. It was very nice.
Yeah. How do you feel about Supreme Master's poetry?
I think she's very good. And these poems all seem to be written in the early to mid-70s, as near as I could guess, but that may not be so. I never saw any dates on any of them, or very few of them. There were a few that has those dates. And so if that's so, I don't know what she would write now, but I know it would be different because, whatever it is, because they were very personal. And a lot of them, these poems that I described that discuss the internal struggle and how difficult it is to come to one with the Supreme Being above who's created everything, and with the Supreme Being inside each of us, that must have been a personal trial that she was going through at that time. These are very emotional and very personal poems, and very fine for that reason. That's they're all very real. So I'm interested in seeing what she would do now, because the subject would be different. She's passed through those tests, and I think they'd be equally fascinating. They'd be beautiful. I'd like to thank her for everything involved with the concert and her work, her worldwide work, which is ongoing and which does so much for so many people. As I just said, I think that she's unique and remarkable and has so much to give, which she is giving. Some people have a lot to give and they don't. And others try, but they don't have a lot to give, and that's very admirable. But she has both, and that's very unique. And the fact that she is able to do that is a great gift to me and to everybody. I'm grateful.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fred Karlin.
My pleasure.
In June 2006, the Peace Seeker was given the highest honor in recognition of its fine quality and superb presentation with the first place Silver Telly statuette for the entertainment category at the 27th Annual Telly Awards. Founded in 1978 by David E. Carter, a past Emmy and Clio winner, the Telly is one of the most sought-after awards by industry leaders, from large international firms to local production companies and ad agencies. That year, the Telly Awards received over 13,000 entries from all 50 states in the USA and over 30 countries and 5 continents. Winners of the Telly represent the best work of the most respected production companies, television stations, cable operators, advertising agencies, and corporate video departments in the world. Awardees in 2006 included CNN, Microsoft, MSNBC, NBA Entertainment, NBC Universal Global Network, Nickelodeon, the Biography Channel, and the History Channel. Mr. Roger Berman is president of Recognition Media, which is the company that produces and hosts the annual Telly Awards. He shared his thoughts on the Peace Seeker and expressed his appreciation of Supreme Master Ching Hai's inspiring presence.
I think anyone viewing it would plainly see, first of all, visually it's beautiful, especially the introduction. And I think the content is really great. I mean, it's inspiring. It's all based on poems set to music, which is, I don't think I've ever really seen that before. You could just tell it's magical, and to have a composer setting music to written word that were poems, I think it's just unbelievable. And so if you watch it, you're entertained. You just sit back and you relax, and it's really, I think the Peace Seeker is a great title for it, because it really just, you're seeking peace. I wasn't seeking peace, but when I watched it, I was very peaceful afterwards. It was really, really nice. And the quality of talent with the composers, the actual symphony, the venue, the Shrine Auditorium. I mean, I think the whole thing just makes it sort of magical. It just pops. And you look at it and you're just all of a sudden just watching it and you're entranced by it. And I don't know, I can't really put one specific thing and say why that won, but apparently our judges really liked it like I did. We can't say enough about her talent, but I think what's even more important is her humanitarian aspect, because there's a lot of talented designers out there in clothing and fashion and the like, but I think to pour your money back into doing good for the world, and really not seeking credit for it, I think is unbelievable. So I think that's what's really inspiring about her. What I'd like to say is your message is truly inspiring. It's nice to be able to recognize something that you were involved in, because it's certainly a great honor for us. And you know, I think that you just keep doing what you're doing. I think there's not enough people in this world that really give back like you do, and you know, we're inspired by it, and we want you to continue.
On today's program, you've enjoyed an excerpt of The Pleasure of Love, sung by Supreme Master Qinghai during an international gathering with our association members in Hungary in 2005. This song was adapted from a poem by Jean de Florian, with music by Hector Berlioz. Next, we heard songs from The Peace Seeker, based on poetry written by Supreme Master Qinghai, with music by Mr. Fred Karlin and vocals by Miss Mel Kubik.
The poems were titled Winter Afternoon, composed by Supreme Master Qinghai in Germany 1979. Cannot Do a Thing With My Heart, written in Germany 1978. He Couldn't Buy, composed by Supreme Master Qinghai in Orlac or Vietnam in 1970 for a young woman about to leave her homeland. Farewell Song, written in Germany in 1978 in dedication to all the refugees in the world. And Untitled One, or Like a Bird, in Germany 1979.
Mr. Fred Karlin also spoke of his inspiration and insights on The Peace Seeker.
Singer and songwriter Mel Kubik was born in Kansas, USA. Ms. Kubik is well versed in various musical genres, including modern pop, rock, jazz and blues. Her CD album entitled Pigeon has earned her praise as an exceptional talent as a singer, a songwriter and a pianist. At the benefit concert, One World of Peace Through Music, organised by the Supreme Master Qinghai International Association, Ms. Kubik was the lead vocalist for the award-winning The Peace Seeker, performed at the Shrine Auditorium, Los Angeles, USA in December 1998.
The rich legacy of Mr. Fred Karlin will live on for years to come, continuing to delight listeners for many generations. Mr. Karlin's soulful compositions touch us deeply, reminding us of the splendor and intrinsic spirituality of our life's journey back to the divine. Our world is certainly a better, more elevated place for the blessed sojourn of the immensely talented and kind-hearted Mr. Fred Karlin.
Nature qu'un moment, chacun d'amour entre toute la vie. Joys of love are just a moment's long. The pain of love endures the whole life long.
Thank you for your company on today's program honoring the great American composer and musician, Oscar and Emmy winner Mr. Fred Karlin. April 1st was also the anniversary of the passing of an eminent Olaxese composer, Dren Gon Sun, a recipient of World Peace Music Award in 2004. Please tune in to our future broadcast of A Journey Through Aesthetic Realms, Music and Poetry, as we honor this nationally celebrated and influential Olaxese songwriter. Now please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Coming up next is Vegetarian Elite. May all be blessed in the grace and protection of Providence.
Désir d'amour, đã đưa cả mong sakram damu ante tu la vida. Joys of love are just a moment's long. The pain of love endures the whole life long.
Chiều buông trên dòng sông Cửu Long như một cơn ước mong.
Kính mời quý vị đón xem vào thứ Bảy, ngày 10 tháng 4 năm 2010, phần 1 chương trình đặc biệt 4 kỳ vinh danh Phạm Duy, một nhạc sĩ Âu Lạc Việt Nam nổi tiếng trên thế giới, với một sự nghiệp âm nhạc trải dài trên 60 năm, qua hàng trăm ca khúc bất hủ trong nhiều thể loại, được mọi người từ bao thế hệ yêu chuộng.
Chiều buông trên dòng sông Cửu Long như một cơn ước mong. Ôi chiều về đâu ơi hàng cây gỗ rong nghiêng mình trên sóng sông.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/MP.